Hello, everyone, and welcome to Johnny's Ambassadors Expert Webinar Series for Parents. I am your host, Laura Stack, the CEO and founder of Johnny's Ambassadors, where we educate parents and teens about the dangers of today's high THC marijuana on adolescent brain development, mental illness, and suicide. We have another wonderful guest with us today, whom I will introduce in just a moment. After I go over some quick logistics, this session is being recorded for your information. Please share it with your friends and family. We do have a handout from Jason, which he has kindly provided and uploaded into the handouts section of your control panel, so you can take notes and follow along, and it will also be on this page if you are watching the recording. Jason will take questions at the end of his presentation. He will go about 45 or 50 minutes, leaving a few minutes at the end. If you have questions, please type them into the question box so that you don't forget them. All right, I would love to introduce Jason R. Kilmer, Ph.D., who is an associate professor in psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the University of Washington, UW, and serves as an investigator on several studies evaluating prevention and intervention efforts for alcohol, cannabis, marijuana, and other drug use by college students. In addition to research and teaching, he has worked extensively with college students and student groups around alcohol and other drug prevention programming and presentations throughout his career, both at UW and on campuses across the nation. Jason, thank you so much for being one of Johnny's ambassadors. Do we have Jason? I think we have lost Jason.
Laura, it's a pleasure. And thank you, Nellie, for the invitation for all you. Thank you. All right. Did you lose me?
Nope, we've still got you.
Okay. Woo. When you said you thought you lost me, that was a little anxiety provoking there. So I'm glad that hopefully you heard what I said. I was saying it was a pleasure. And I appreciate all you do to be a champion for prevention. That matters in a big, big way. I'm going to dive right into this. The presentation today is entitled, What the Science Says About Cannabis and What It Means for Parents. I do want to thank Laura, not only for this invitation, but again, for the work that's done. And thank all of you for making the time for this webinar and doing what you're doing at a stressful time. I said that in this presentation that research would be reviewed, examining how cannabis has changed over the past few years, what this means about addiction potential, health, mental health, as well as looking at some of the science around a range of different outcomes, academics, driving risks, cognitive abilities, sleep, and more, with implications for parents. You heard that I'm at the University of Washington. That feels like a lie in a way, because I've been in the University of our dining room for the last 55 weeks. But it's remarkable to think that this has been over a year of working virtually. I want you to realize it takes a special degree of confidence in your own appearance to send this to a coworker. But after about 6 weeks at home, I received this from a coworker. And I was like, seriously? Can you imagine reading this article and going, well, I know I look good, but you know who needs this? Jason. So I got it, and I was like, well, I'm totally going to read it. And I read it, and it says the #1 tip to looking good is lighting. So on top of thanking Laura and thanking all of you, I want to thank my co-presenter, Lampy, who's been sitting really close to me for the last year plus and is one of only 3 friends that I have at this point. I'm going to start not talking about the topic. I'm going to start talking about science, as evidenced by this slide that simply says science. These are all pictures that I took during November and December of 2019. I feel like it was the last time we were able to comfortably travel. And they all kind of started to tell a story. Some intersections are unintentionally clever. When visiting my brother in Charlotte, North Carolina, and walking their dog as a family, we came across the intersection of Owen and Wilson, which I thought was hilarious. If you're like, why is that hilarious? Who's Owen Wilson? Well, it's this handsome fella. But I just thought that was outstanding, and those people mainly wanted me to get off of their lawn. Some science could either be really inspiring or kind of scary. I was speaking at a conference in Michigan, and going from the Detroit airport across the sky bridge to rental cars and down the escalator, at the base of an escalator was a sign that said, elevators are behind you. And at first I was like, wow, they're rooting for me. Like, elevators are behind me. And then I thought, wow, that takes on a way different feeling if you whisper that. elevators are behind you. And I thought that seemed super scary. Some signs need a bit more context. What's happening here? I have two little brothers. As soon as I saw this sign, I took a picture of it and texted both of them. And I said, this is proof that when you have more than one kid in the family, mom clearly has a favorite, which is the only conclusion here, obviously. This was by an elevator saying, hey, kid on the left, don't ride alone. Be like the cool kid on the right and hold a parent's hand. But if you're a sibling, you know what's up. And finally, some signs do change your landscape of prevention. If you land at SeaTac Airport, hang a left on International Boulevard, the first billboard that greets you to my state is this one. That contributes to everything from norms and perceived norms to impacts on climate in terms of what people expect and think. About 2 miles from where we are right now, this is not a cannabis retail store. This is a dog grooming store, now selling CBD for you and your pet. People who get really fired up about animal testing should get pretty fired up about this, because we don't have a lot of good science about what CBD does with people, let alone what it does with animals. And so when you look collectively at this collection of signs, some of them, of course, meant to be lighthearted, some of them really highlight that we've got our work cut out for us when we look at prevention and prevention messaging. I think that what's really, really important is that as a field, we've got to play catch up on what people are using in the real world in 2021, since potency is at never before seen rates. If you orient the brain such that the front of the brain is on the left of the slide, the back of the brain is on the right, you can see all the different parts of the brain associated with different functions. THC is the most well-studied cannabinoid in cannabis. In distant second place is CBD. Other cannabinoids are virtually unstudied for their impact on people. Where does THC bind in the brain? All over the place. You can't graphically show a high any better than looking at the reward pathway in purple and seeing that THC binds to endogenous cannabinoid receptors in that part of the brain. But what this means is as THC potency changes, we need to be aware of a potential change to the human beings. This article came out in 2016 by El Soli and colleagues. And when packaged with Dr. Nora Volkoff's 2014 article, it lets us estimate cannabis potency over the past 50 years. When you hear about people that reference their time in the 70s and they say that they, in quotes, smoked grass, it's because it was practically grass. 1.5% THC. In the 80s, it was 2 to 3% THC. By 95, 4%. By 2001, over 6%. By 2006, it was over 8%. We've been double digits in THC potency in the United States since 2010. This is my state's second ever marijuana impact report. And it showed at the time of its release that the average THC potency in the United States was a never before seen 13.18%. Never before seen until you come to Washington. The average available for sale in the city of Seattle, 21.62%. I love research in a nerdy way. And if someone said to me for $10 million, what does the science say about Washington weed and the human brain? First, good job for having $10 million. And second, we don't know. That's changing though. We're starting to see some research come out about the impacts of this high potency use. Notice that one store in Seattle actually allowed their product, smokable flower or bud, to actually be identified. And they showed the range. Notice the low end goes down to 11%. You're going to see why that matters. Hash oils, concentrates, what people use for dabbing, the average potency in the nation, 55.85%. The average potency in Seattle, we're pushing 72%. My friends, this does not occur in nature. When people say it's just weed, it stopped being just weed decades ago. When people say, but it's natural, again, these are potencies that do not occur in nature. This takes some deliberate, intentional breeding and or extraction. Now, I just want to give you as one example. This is an article by Smart and colleagues looking at my own state's market. This is a pretty slide. It takes a little bit of time to realize what you're looking at. Time goes left to right. In blue at the very, very bottom, it's products available for sale under 10% THC. In that brick red band, it's 10 to 15, green 15 to 20, anything in purple is anything over 20% THC. Anything under 10 has been virtually eliminated from the market. So why that matters and why potency matters is when you look at what European researchers and many other researchers have called high potency cannabis, it's defined as anything over 10% THC. I will remind you that we're above that in the United States, and in states that have legalized cannabis for non-medical purposes, not only is it higher than that, in some instances it's doubled or more than doubled. The concentrates are, as you can see, 5.5 to 6 to 7 times what researchers call high potency cannabis. Why that matters is DeForty and colleagues across 11 European cities and Brazil showed that for people that use high potency cannabis, anything over 10%, on a daily basis, they have a 4.8 to 5.8 greater likelihood of developing psychosis, psychotic disorder, than people who don't use it all. And that's after you account for other substance use, for other predictors, for other variables. Something's going on when you look at that. This article came out in spring of 2020. It showed increased risk of addiction, increased risk of generalized anxiety disorder for adolescents and young adults that use high potency cannabis. Again, identified as anything over 10% THC. This article also from 2020 showed that for concentrates or extracts, there was more association with problematic cannabis use, being addicted, cannabis use disorder, as well as mental health disorders. So again, the narrative is changing. You see that these references are all from the past 2 years, and 2 of them were from 2020. But with a ever-changing potency and ever-changing product, we're constantly having to make sure that research is playing catch-up. The second thing we have to do is separate out placebo effects from pharmacological effects. I had the honor of working with Alan Marlatt, who is a very influential psychologist who made big advances on relapse prevention, on brief interventions for college students around drinking, as well as expectancies. He did research that showed that when people think they're drinking alcohol, even when they get nothing at all, they nevertheless act more funny, act more social. Alcohol does a lot of things, but the social or interpersonal things people get from alcohol are more due to their expectations, their beliefs, than what they're actually getting. Can you do the type of balanced placebo research with cannabis that Dr. Marlatt did? Yes, but it's challenging. So what researchers have started to do is just look at placebo studies. Laughlin and colleagues did a brilliant study where they recruited people that used cannabis at least once per month up to multiple times per day. As it turned out, all but 2 people in their study used at least once per week up to multiple times per day. So these were fans of cannabis who used fairly frequently and know if I use, it affects me in this way. They told people, we're going to ask you to not use anything at least 8 hours before you get here, and there's going to be a variable end depending on which condition you're in. Why? You're going to be in one of 3 conditions. Now, that was not true. There was some deception. But they told people they were either going to be in a no-dose room, a low THC room, or a high THC room. And that once they were checked in, they were put in cubicles and told, we're going to have you ingest an edible. And then you're going to rate music and comedy clips, color designs, and compute math problems. In front of the group, they said, you're in the high THC condition. And they proceeded to give them a lollipop. They said, be careful. This is strong stuff. What did they give them? Hemp pops. Hemp pops are made with hemp seed oil, no active elements of THC or CBD, glucose syrup, citric acid, sugar, natural flavors and colors number 2 and number 5, which are the 2 most delicious colors. They said, you know how edibles work. There can be a lag. So we want you to rate your mood. We want you to rate how high you feel. And we want you to do that again at the 30-minute mark and again at the 60-minute mark. What did they find? There was a statistically significant decrease in negative mood, even though people got nothing at all. There was even a statistically significant increase in people reporting that they felt high, again, even though they received nothing at all. Does cannabis do stuff? Yes. Does it do everything it's credited with? No. There need to be expectancy research and placebo studies done to really rule out what pharmacologically can truly be attributed to cannabis versus what's more of an expectancy. When someone says, well, it relaxes me, does it? Or is that a placebo effect? No different than someone getting more talkative when they have a glass of alcohol in their hand. When someone says, well, it makes me more creative, does it? Or is that an expectancy effect? That type of research needs to be done. I tried to pick 5 scientific findings that I thought were relevant to parents, to young adults, and to adolescents before we open it up to questions for you at the end. The fifth is impact on attention, concentration, and memory. The part of the brain that, among other things, affects attention, concentration, and memory is called the hippocampus. Truly long story short, after cannabis use, the neurons in that part of the brain get suppressed. They fire, but they fire at a rate that's lower and slower than they could or should be firing. Harrison Pope is a researcher who said, I want to test this with college students, but I don't want to get people crazy high, make them take a test and say, well, it clearly affected their cognitive abilities. He said, I want to have people use, and I want to test them a full day later. 24 hours after use, there are significant decreases in attention, concentration, and memory. And the more heavily and frequently people typically used, the more pronounced those decreases were. That's huge. Pope showed two things the researchers had never shown before. One, that even a day later, you could see the impact cognitively, and two, that there seemed to be this cumulative effect the more heavily people used. Scientists said, wow, that's a game changer article. Critics said it doesn't prove anything. It's not causal. What if people who struggle with attention just happen to like using cannabis? So he said, we can test that. Ethically, we can't take people who don't use and make them start. But what if we take people that use every day and have them quit? We follow them over time. If we follow them over time and their cognitive abilities stay the same, well, maybe they were there to start with. But if their substance use goes away, if as they abstain, their cognitive ability starts to improve, that's causal. It takes 4 weeks, but 28 days after stopping daily marijuana use, there are no longer any significant effects on attention, concentration, and memory compared to a control group of people who don't use it all. In Susan Tapert's lab in San Diego, looking at a sample of 15 to 19-year-olds who use, on average, every other day, verbal learning takes 2 weeks of abstinence to match that of people who don't use. Verbal working memory takes 3 weeks. Attention seemingly takes the full 4 weeks. Think about what that means. If someone says, well, I have ADHD and I'm being treated for it, cannabis is a horrible fit. We know of no substance more associated with causing attention decreases, let alone exacerbating or worsening existing ones. If someone says, well, can I have Adderall because I think I have ADHD? We can't diagnose if someone does or doesn't have an attention issue if they're using a substance that causes attention decreases. But think about for a student who says, I really want to do well in school, but my memory is not what I want it to be, or I'm having a difficult time concentrating or paying attention, and they're using marijuana, stopping their marijuana use will absolutely pay dividends academically. How can we shed more light on that? Amelia Aria is senior author on an article, a white paper that came out in March of 2013. That link is in your handouts. And I'm going to quote directly from their report. They said, of all the problems that contribute to dropping out, substance use is one of the easiest to identify and one of the most easily stopped by interventions, including treatment. Research evidence shows that when adolescents stop substance abuse, academic performance improves. They found that substance-using students were at increased risk for academic failure, including dropping out, and that marijuana had a stronger negative relationship to grade point average and other outcomes, as well as risk for dropout, than alcohol. If someone says, I want to be the biggest champion ever for academic outcomes, they need to be a champion for alcohol and other drug prevention. Because what we do about substance use will pay dividends in classrooms. Quote, the more severe the substance use, the more likely the impact on academic performance and risk for dropout. On college campuses, Amelia's research has shown that the more frequently students use cannabis, the more it's associated with discontinuous enrollment, not dropping out, but stopping out, losing credit, taking quarters or semesters off, taking longer to get to graduation if they even graduate, skipping more classes, and lower GPAs. Swerkin and colleagues showed that students that use marijuana and are followed over time, there are two trajectories of students less likely to still be enrolled and less likely to graduate on time. Those are those that decrease. That's a surprising finding until you understand some students get pretty behind. They dig a really deep hole, and it can take a while to get out of that hole, as well as those that keep using frequently. Boland and colleagues showed that alcohol and marijuana use are both associated with lower grade point average, but if you put them in the same statistical equation explaining variance, marijuana is driving that ship. When both are accounted for, the effects of alcohol become non-significant. Ending on a positive note, Maida and colleagues showed that students using both marijuana and alcohol at moderate to high levels have significantly lower GPA over 2 years, and that those that make a change improve their GPA. When you ask students, though, hey, what gets in the way of your academic success, they don't tend to say substances. This is data from fall of 2019. Remember fall 2019? This is data from the National College Health Assessment. Over 30,000 students, 58 schools across the country. Students say what gets in the way of doing well: procrastination, stress, anxiety, sleep difficulties, feeling down. Alcohol was in 32nd place of 51 factors, tied with concussion and traumatic brain injury. Fortunately, we don't see rates of concussion or traumatic brain injury the way we see rates of drinking. But students may not be realizing that their alcohol use could actually be the very thing contributing, especially to a lot of what's on this list. But I want to draw your attention to number 2, number 3, and number 4. And that leads to this 4th point, which is impact of substance use on sleep quality and subsequent effects. I'm going to, only because I can't see my own video, and Laura made me a little nervous at the beginning when she said I had disappeared. I'm going to ask if Laura can just chime in and make sure that you all still see me, hear me, and that we're all...
You're great. You're on a roll.
Cool.
Love it. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to keep moving then. We've all been on Zoom for the last 13 months, so it's exciting. I feel like I'm going somewhere new when I get to use a new program, which is a super sad commentary, but there you go. So number 4 is impact of substance use on sleep quality. This article is amazing. You can see from the link that it only is 9 pages long, 101 through 109. I love that. We all have a lot on our plates. When someone sends me an article, it's like 50 pages long, and they're like, hey, Jason, you should read this. I'm like, you should read this. This is only a 9-page article counting references, and it's a great explanation of the role of alcohol on sleep. We know there are a lot of things that impact the rate of absorption of alcohol into the body, but the rate of oxidation, the rate of, in quotes, sobering up, is a constant. People burn off 0.016% off their blood alcohol level per hour. Someone who's at a 0.08 at midnight won't blow a zero on a breathalyzer till 5 in the morning. 0.16 at midnight, not till 10 in the morning. 0.24 at midnight, if they want to sleep it off, they're going to have a positive BAC till 3 in the afternoon the next day. Some people say, if I drink at night, I fall asleep faster. That's true. Alcohol is a depressant. It depresses or slows down the central nervous system, and onset of sleep can be quicker. We can ask people, on nights when you've been drinking, what do you notice about your sleep? Tell me about your dreaming. People are like, wow, how did you know? I don't dream at all. Or if I do dream, it's crazy vividly right before I wake up. Here's why. Go to bed with if you wanted to have a perfect night's sleep, it should look like this. We've got 5 different stages of sleep, different brain waves present at each. REM sleep is rapid eye movement sleep. This is where we do our dreaming. Non-REM is stages 1 through 4, probably most well known as stage 4 or deep sleep. Sleep experts have made clear REM is overrated. It's not that more REM is better. What you want is a night that as the night progresses, you spend more and more and more time in REM, less and less and less time in the other stages of sleep. If people go to bed after drinking, they will fall asleep faster. But while they have a positive blood alcohol level, if they have a positive BAC the whole night, the brainwaves needed to kick into REM sleep don't happen. That will account for the person's subjective impression that they didn't dream. It's because they genuinely didn't enter REM sleep. If they go positive, 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 hit a 0 BAC, now they go through an acute REM rebound, where they spend too much time in REM, not enough time in the other stages of sleep, vivid, weird dreams right before waking up. Who cares? What's the impact of a night of REM-deprived sleep? Increases the next day in sleepiness, anxiety, irritability, and jumpiness. Use multiple nights in a row, this is cumulative. This is additive. Take a night off, body plays catch up. Everyone's had the next night's sleep, whether you've ever touched a substance in your life or not. Why do I know that? Because lots of things cause REM deprivation, including not sleeping, sleep deprivation. Think of the last time you pulled an all-nighter, or you only got an hour or 2 of sleep. The next day, you try and play catch up. You sleep for 8-9 hours. How do you feel when you wake up? Tired, groggy. It's like, how do you feel tired? You got 9 hours of sleep. Just quantity different than quality. I can't graphically show you insomnia any better than right there. Look at those amazing special effects. A person will slam so fast into deep and immediately into REM. First, that can lead to nodding off at inopportune times. But that rapid cycling leads to difficulty both falling and staying asleep. Plus, once they get to REM, too much time in REM, not enough time in the other stages of sleep. The next day we see fatigue. Why did I show you that with alcohol? Because with cannabis, there's arguably even a more pronounced impact, but people also don't connect those dots. What do students say gets in the way of doing well in school? Stress, anxiety, and sleep. Cannabis is in 40th place of 51 factors. And we see all these mixed messages. This is not some counterculture newspaper. The Seattle Times had run an article saying 10 types of marijuana that will help you sleep like a baby. The author probably didn't do a deep dive into the scientific literature, because if they had, they would have found the article by Angarita and colleagues from 2016, which documented clearly that with marijuana, two things happen. A lot of people say, if I use weed at night, I fall asleep fast. But the key is, I feel like I sleep hard. I sleep and I mean it. And don't dream. What they're calling sleeping hard is that stage 4 or deep sleep gets extended. Why don't they dream? No REM. So I show you that, and it took understanding alcohol's impact to see that with cannabis, not only is there the REM deprivation, but there's the stage 4 extension, meaning the sleep cycle is even more disrupted. What do we see the next day? Just like with alcohol, increases in daytime sleepiness, anxiety, irritability, jumpiness. Use every day, every night, those are additive or cumulative. Take a night off, just like with alcohol, you see REM rebound. In the work we do in interventions, if a student says, my value or goal is to do well in school, what's the status quo? I'm not doing as hot as I'd like. How come? Because I'm so tired and I'm so anxious. In fact, the only thing that helps me at night is to use weed to fall asleep. It could be the very thing contributing to exacerbating or even causing anxiety and those sleep issues. What the science shows is if people stop their substance use, it pays big dividends on sleep quality, and accordingly pays big dividends on all of those effects you see on that slide. Number 3, factors associated with health and mental health that weren't already addressed earlier. Wayne Hall, in my eyes, the biggest name on this planet in cannabis research, did a study with his colleague Louise Degenhardt that showed that those that use cannabis 10 or more times by the age of 18 were 2 to 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. Realize that article is from 2009, and look how well that holds with the article by DeForty and colleagues 10 years later, looking at the increased risk of high-potency cannabis and psychosis. In fact, Hall and Degenhardt concluded that 13% of schizophrenia cases could go away if cannabis use was prevented. That's huge. And so especially that finding about by age 18, anything we can do to keep substances out of the hands of kids, the science supports that 1,000,000%. I had the honor of moderating a webinar with Dr. Hall, and I said to him, on college campuses in Washington State, post-legalization, if we could do one thing, what would it be? And his answer surprised me. He said, I would absolutely screen in your counseling and health centers for people being addicted to marijuana. I said, why? He said, we do not know what comes first. We do not know what causes what, but we see a scary 3-way interaction between depression, being addicted to marijuana, and suicide risk. Such that if someone willing to say, I'd like to talk to someone about my depression, flags as cannabis dependent, that increases our anxiety about suicide risk for them. I said, if it's appropriate to recommend a tool for screening, so obviously people aren't going to be surveying their families, but if you're watching this as someone that has the ability to work in a center where you might do screening, his recommendation was the Cannabis Use Disorders Identification Test Revised. It starts with a simple yes/no question. Have you used any cannabis over the past 6 months? If no, you're done. If yes, there's 8 questions, and your handout includes the screening as well as the link to where this exists. When we got done with the webinar, I told him I was blown away by that suggestion. It was just fascinating to me. And he said, look at your own country's data. He's in Australia. So I did, because I'm a really compliant student. And this is not causal, but it's data from the National Survey of Drug Use and Health. In that kind of bluish purple are all adults. In green, people with any past year marijuana use. Notice that serious thoughts of suicide, 2.5 times greater. Making a suicide plan, 2.5 times greater. Attempting suicide, 3 times greater. He said, though, it's not just using, it's being addicted. And when you look at a past year substance use disorder, now these rates go up even more. Having a past year substance use disorder, 4 times greater likelihood of serious thoughts of suicide, 4.5 times greater likelihood of making a suicide plan, 5.5 times greater likelihood of attempting suicide. I hear people say, well, at least you can't overdose on marijuana. That's not true. With high doses, people can experience an acute toxic psychosis, hallucinations, delusions. They're convinced something's happening, then there's no evidence that it's happening, or complete out-of-body stuff, depersonalization. It seems more likely when a person uses too much or potency is high. What are we seeing? The potency is going up and up and up and up. So, when something like this happens, people are like, wow, I wonder if their marijuana was laced with something. High potency cannabis on its own can cause these acute toxic psychoses. An article by Fisher and colleagues came out that got a lot of attention, especially for people who do work around harm reduction. The title alone is very telling. This does not say low-risk cannabis use guidelines. It says lower risk. And the reason why is they said, if you look at the science, there is no low-risk cannabis use. The most effective way to avoid any risk of cannabis use is to abstain from use. Quoting verbatim, those who decide to use need to recognize that they incur risks of a variety of acute and long-term adverse health and social outcomes. That's important to keep in mind. So this was not, hey, everybody, here's safe use. Nope, we don't use that word. This isn't even low risk, it's lower risk. But one of the guidelines is that if you're actively dealing with or have a family history of psychosis or substance use issues, or a pregnant woman, they say you're encouraged to avoid using. Number two, wouldn't it be great to go like a whole hour and not hear this word? I'm not going to say this word. I've been Voldemorting the name of this virus, right? It's the virus that shall not be named. But what we do about substance use will have an impact on this as well. The stay-at-home issue, we were sent virtual on March 6th. 2.5 weeks later, the National Institute on Drug Abuse said, because it attacks the lungs, this issue we've been dealing with could be an especially serious threat to those that smoke tobacco or marijuana or who vape. By summer, research out of Stanford University showed that while we knew this was mainly affecting older adults or people with underlying health issues, there were some young people that were getting it and getting a fairly severe infection. What they found is that people that smoked or vaped cannabis or tobacco were more likely to get it. And if I draw your attention to the right, we're more likely to get an infection that was more severe. The narrative became very clear by fall when this article came out and showed that in a sample of 13 to 24-year-olds, those that vape, 5 times greater likelihood of testing positive, those that vape and smoke, 7 times greater likelihood of testing positive. If a community says the number one thing we've got to do is get this virus under control, then what we do about vaping, juuling, smoking becomes a priority as well. As I head to the finish line at the 33-minute mark, if you're thinking to yourself so far, wow, that Jason Kilmer has a strong stylus game, you would be right. The first time this stylus shot out of my laptop, I was like, what is this thing? And my friend said, it's a stylus. I'm like, I don't know what that is. They said, you can use it to draw stuff. And now I just can't be stopped. So on top of all these amazing drawings you've seen so far, I made this orca for everybody that I'm very proud of. Here's a velociraptor. Notice the 3 fingers make it a raptor. 2 would have made it a T-Rex. This is a majestic unicorn, since I learned how to use the rainbow feature. This is my friend Amanda's basset hound, and this is my friend Amanda's basset hound following CDC guidelines, because that's a good puppy. Number 1, addiction risk. I get asked all the time, is weed even addictive? Yes, it is. And there are very clear guidelines for cannabis use disorder. In the old days, 2012, in the old days, we had DSM-4, and we talked about cannabis abuse and cannabis dependence. When the DSM-5 came out in 2013, it was folded into a substance use disorder, and you pick the name of the substance, so cannabis use disorder. And it collapsed symptoms, and based on the number of symptoms a person endorses, that's when you actually give it a rating of mild, moderate, or severe. Volkov's 2014 article said with high confidence we can say this is an addictive substance. 9% who even try it wind up becoming addicted. That number doubles when you look at those that begin in adolescence. And 25 to 50% of those with daily use. But compared to those that begin using in adulthood, those that begin in adolescence are 2 to 4 times as likely to develop dependence within 2 years. What we do on prevention, for youth, for adolescents, for young people matters in a huge way and in a big public health way. I want to say a quick word about medical cannabis use, particularly if people are declining to talk to a counselor, a health professional, and I hope none of you mishear me. If you have a friend, a loved one, a family member with a potentially gravely disabling or life-threatening condition that's had medical cannabis recommended and they're using it as recommended, then bless that person. That's not who I'm talking about. But I worry about the 18-year-old who's really depressed and instead of being willing to talk to a counselor says, well, I'm just going to use medical marijuana instead. Here's why. I have the honor of presenting in Canada right before they opened the floodgates on legalization nationwide for non-medical purposes. And what was striking is that despite the fact that they were about to make cannabis available for non-medical purposes in a more widespread way, I was seeing all these headlines that the Canadian Family Physicians Association was saying they needed to slow down on medical cannabis use. So I went to the original article, which is an amazing read. It's only 10 pages long. If you say, I don't have time to read 10 pages, read figure 1. They said, we want this flowchart to be the decision tree. You can see medical cannabinoid prescribing algorithm. If someone says, hey, can I have medical cannabis? That's what's being asked. Is it for neuropathic pain, palliative and end-of-life pain, chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, or spasticity due to multiple sclerosis or spinal cord injury? If no, then we're done. We're not giving it for depression, anxiety, sleep, back pain, neck pain, headaches, anything else. Why? What's the key to every medication? You want the benefits to outweigh the side effects. You want to be able to cite, are there already effective treatments out there? You want to be able to control for placebo effects. We know there are effective treatments. Counseling works, and there are effective treatments for all of those other things. You cannot make the case that the benefits are outweighed by the harms. You cannot make the case that you would start there. If yes, if it's for one of those things, has the person tried traditional therapies and treatments first? If no, go back to the drawing board. Only if yes, do you consider a medical cannabinoid as an adjunct, but notice they say, heads up, people don't smoke their medicine. So before I move on, if you're like, well, I pulled out the status again. Yes, he did. I drew a picture of a Bigfoot because I really need more to do with, I need hobbies, everybody. People go, but what about CBD, right? I hear that CBD helps everything. The second you tell someone, oh, you have anxiety, use CBD, you've planted an expectancy. Arndt and DeWitt did a brilliant study where they recruited people to be their own control group. What do we know about us as people? We get anxious. I'm very anxious as I'm presenting right now. We get upset. We get angry. They said, what if we have people take a pill, but they don't know what it is? And then we induce unwanted affect. We introduce negative emotional stimuli. It was a double-blind experiment. What does that mean? You eliminate expectancies. The person taking it doesn't know what they're getting. The person you're bringing it to them doesn't know what they're bringing them. Everyone signed a consent form saying, I agree to take something that could include CBD. And people had 4 different conditions, and they counterbalanced the order. They either got a sugar pill, placebo, or 300, 600, or 900 milligrams of CBD orally. They would take the pill, then they would be introduced to, and they would induce negative emotional stimuli. When you eliminate expectancies, what did CBD do? Nothing. Again, I hope no one mishears me. I'm not saying CBD does nothing, period. Way more research needs to be done. And you saw from the study by Allen and colleagues that there may be some medical uses. However, quote, this study suggests that oral CBD does not alter responses to emotional stimuli or produce anxiolytic, anxiety-reducing, like effects in healthy human subjects. So again, I tell you this because I root for our youth. I root for our adolescents. I root for the college students I work with. And it's been a hard year. If people are anxious or stressed, we want to get them connected with services that work rather than something that has made a claim where the science isn't there at all. And finally, I think we actually need to take a pretty close look at how many people are reporting medical use that are actually managing addiction. Is marijuana addictive? Yes. Is there even criteria for cannabis withdrawal? Also, yes. My friend and colleague, Christine Lee, asked incoming students, tell us why you use cannabis. And they said things like, I like getting high, I like the feeling, helps me bond with friends, gives me something to do when I'm bored, makes things more fun, music sounds better. it's cool, it helps me celebrate. But they also said it helps me relax, helps me sleep, helps me cope when I'm depressed, relieves stress, helps when my appetite sucks, reduces anxiety, alleviates physical pain, helps when I have a headache. Is cannabis addictive? Yes. Are there even criteria for cannabis withdrawal? Also yes. What do those withdrawals include? Keeping this list in mind: anxiety, sleep problems, appetite problems, depressed mood, and headaches. If you've got someone that says, I know marijuana helps my anxiety and my sleep, if you ask them, well, how do you know? If they say, I use weed every day, and last week I ran out for 3 days, my anxiety was brutal, couldn't sleep at all. Finally got my hands on weed again, my anxiety went away, my sleep improved. See, it helps my anxiety and my sleep. That is not marijuana use helping anxiety and sleep. That is resuming substance use, making withdrawal symptoms stop. In that instance, that's a case of managing addiction, not managing underlying anxiety or sleep issues. So I want you all to know parents are unbelievably influential. And I think that messaging from parents becomes really, really clear. To make that point, I'm going to show you a study, not about kids, but about college students, and not about marijuana, but about alcohol. One of my coworkers, Annie Fairley, when she was at the University of Rhode Island, did an amazing study. And the figure that showed up was one of the figures that don't occur in nature. It was incredible to be able to see. She collected data before students started college, at the end of their first year of school, and at the end of their second year of school. And they wanted to be able to predict heavy episodic or binge drinking by looking at social modeling, number of close friends that drink heavily, perceived friend approval of drinking and getting drunk, as well as did the students say my parents are cool with what I do around drinking, perceived parental permissiveness. Want to see the most perfect figure ever? Look at those lines. They're practically parallel. Top line, so along the y-axis is frequency of binge drinking, heavy episodic drinking. What's the top line? High social modeling, high parental permissiveness. Next line down, high social modeling, low parental permissiveness. Do you realize that messaging from parents can literally alter the trajectory of a student that goes to a high-risk campus, high-risk setting, like a fraternity or sorority, or anything like that? Messaging from parents matters. Next line down, low social modeling, high permissiveness from parents. Bottom line, low social modeling, low parental permissiveness. If someone said to me, if you could find one figure to show people about high school students, what would you show? I would show this. This is sophomores in high school. Hey kids, do you think your parents think it's wrong for you to use marijuana or that it's not wrong? When kids say, my parents would think it's wrong, 13% of high school sophomores nevertheless report they use marijuana at least once in the past 30 days. When kids say, my parents wouldn't care, 59% have used at least once in the past 30 days. Hey kids, what do you think about your community? Do you think the community would think it's wrong for you to use or not wrong? When kids say our community wouldn't care, the prevalence rates are more than double. We can fix that. Things like your group, things like webinars like this that say, look, prevention matters, kids matter, that sends a message. When they ask sophomores in high school, do you live with someone that uses marijuana? When they say yes, 3.5 times greater likelihood of using 6 or more days in the past 30. That can have everything to do with perceived permissiveness to access to the substance, but the bottom line is what parents do matters. I'm principal investigator of our state's Young Adult Health Survey, where we ask 18 to 25-year-olds, and we've been doing this over the last now 7 years, but the data we've been able to share so far are from 2019. When we ask 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that use marijuana, where do they get it? We've seen getting it from friends, getting it from a medical dispensary, or from someone the medical card has gone down. You can see the impact of those medical outlets going down when our state eliminated medical dispensaries. But where it's gone up significantly, giving money to someone to get it for them, getting it from family, or getting it from parents with their permission. I don't know if parents say, well, I used weed and I turned out fine. They use different stuff. I don't know if parents are unaware of the impact of mental health. I don't know if parents are unaware of the impact on academic outcomes, but we can enlist parents' help in what we do. There's a website that I'd like to share from my own state because I think it's really solid, called Start Talking Now, that talks about the importance of a lot of these things. One of the things it talks about, particularly for kids that are about to be drivers, is the impact on driving. I know my own state of best, and I didn't want to spend too much time talking about it, but I said in the outline that I would. The main thing we've seen is that fatalities with THC present have increased since legalization. And when you hear people say, well, I drive better when I'm high, not a single study in the world shows that that's true. They're operating off of an incorrect script. Kids know if you see someone that's been drinking, get their keys, don't get in the car with them. But I worry that people are willing to be passengers in cars with someone that has used or even used in their vehicle. So even being able to talk with kids about substance use, but things like, refusing offers to use, making sure you're not getting in a situation that would be scary for you. Rob Cherisi is the big name in parent interventions for college campuses. He worked with MAD, and from their website, that link is going to be right there in your handouts. They say begin talking together about substance use, select clear rules, agree on appropriate consequences for breaking those, and then enforce those consequences when rules are broken. Do talk about the short and long-term risks of substance use. I hope the information I presented today is useful for that. Help plan for social pressure to use, and work with other parents and community leaders to make and enforce policies that keep substances away from underage youth. In our state, we also have a booklet. The link to that is right there in your handouts, where it's very similar. Express a no-use attitude, start early, teach and practice skills to refuse drug offers, set clear guidelines, keep track of what your student is doing, keep lines of communication open, and monitor your own behavior. So with that, again, the link to the parent handbook for talking to teens about alcohol is at this link in your handouts. A number of resources, including the guide for talking. You can see it's how to talk to your kids about marijuana is at this website. And with that, I'd like to be able to open up for question and answers. My email address is right there, jkilmer@uw.edu. We're on Twitter as a lab, the Center for the Study of Health and Risk Behaviors, which is super exciting for us. If you feel compelled to tweet anything about today, I know we'd be really excited to see that shout out, and we would be really quick to reply and or retweet. But we're at CSHRB_UW. I want to thank Laura again. Lastly, I drew this picture and I texted it to my niece, and she texted back and said, "You really need hobbies, Uncle Jason," and I've never felt more understood, to be honest with you. So with that, I will stop talking and I will stop sharing my screen. And thank you all for the chance to present to you today. And we'll move over to questions and answers. Laura, thank you.
That seems like a hobby to me. I mean, I'm having serious stylist envy over here. I mean, who knew? A raptor, 3 toes, this is really important stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really liked your presentation, and I love your style, your knowledge, your application, your research. This was just such an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. And we do have some questions.
Great. Fingers crossed I can answer them.
Yes. In the impacts of cannabis on sleep, I may have missed it, but is there a correlation between loss of REM sleep specifically and impacts on learning?
REM is, all the stages of sleep are important. I've had the chance to work with a sleep expert who's made very clear REM is overrated. It's not like when you go to bed, you should be like, come on, REM, because that's weird, right?
Okay.
The person next to you is like, what did you say? It's like, I didn't say anything. I love you, REM. But what is very, very clear is that what's most important is not REM, period. It's that sleep cycle where time spent in REM gets longer, 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 and longer. Okay. REM is involved in consolidation of memories. So in that instance, yes, it can play a part in learning. You're right, because if we're studying for something and people are being REM deprived, then it could actually have an impact on how memories are consolidated.
Okay, got it. Let's see, is there anything to help someone who is probably addicted to cannabis with the withdrawal symptoms? So if they're addicted, they don't take it for 3 days. You mentioned they take it again, they're feeling better. Well, that's because they're addicted to the substance. So what would they do instead?
I think that even naming it, I met with a student who said, I feel like I need help and I'm trying to quit using, but my friends are like, dude, you can't get addicted to weed. It's just weed. And that narrative's out there, and that does people a disservice who could benefit from counseling, from treatment, you name it. So first is, if someone says, I actually feel like I need support, it's making sure they are able to get connected to that support. The other is literally naming and normalizing that withdrawal is real, so that when those symptoms emerge, people can properly label that what they're experiencing is not, quote, anxiety coming back. It's not, oh no, now I have insomnia. It's withdrawal symptoms that will improve and will go away and will get better. It wasn't even until the 90s that researchers documented that there was a withdrawal. Not to diminish the impact to any one person, but withdrawal from alcohol, withdrawal from opiates is so much more severe. And so we do let people know that while it could be uncomfortable, it will get better. And if someone says, I can't make it through that withdrawal, it's getting connected with support, getting connected with treatment, counseling, you name it. But I think even letting people know that what you're experiencing is withdrawal that will likely hit a peak within 3 to 7 days. Once you've hit that 7-day mark, you've passed it. You're all literally improving every day after that can be important.
I had that exact same situation happen. A woman, young woman, 19 years old from Canada, happened to read an article about Johnny's story and reached out to me on Facebook, found me and said, I had no idea that this was happening to me until I read your son's story.
Wow.
Like, there's so much about it being just a lack of in Canada, you're 19, you can legally go buy a shatter. And she was told by the bud tender that it would help her with her sleep. And yet the same thing you're talking about here, insomnia, anxiety, beginning to get psychosis. And she said, if I wouldn't have read the article about Johnny, it never would have dawned on me that the marijuana was causing that because of the messages of safety here in Canada.
Yeah.
Critically important. And I said, luckily, I said something smart. I said, why don't you try not taking it for 2 weeks and see what happens? And she's now on the other side of it and writes me and wants to be a spokesperson and join the community and is on the other side. But the addiction is hugely problematic. Let's see here. What is the rate of marijuana use by college students at UW?
I would actually have to look at our most recent data to find that out because I don't have that committed to memory. We haven't been on campus for over a year. So I'd have to do a little deep dive. I will say this, on college campuses in the United States, depending on the survey you look at, the rates are pretty consistent. And it tells the overwhelming story that most college students don't use. There are such gross normative misperceptions that, quote, everyone uses. And part of where that comes from is Sandra Wolfson is a researcher that showed that the most significant misperceptions of cannabis use come from those that use most heavily themselves. And so when you ask someone that uses, what's your sense of who uses? And they're like, everyone at the school uses. That's a normative misperception. I think of recent studies that show 36, 37, 38-ish% say at least once in the past year I've used. What does that mean? Most people aren't using. Our young adult health survey in the state of Washington, again, we're collecting data on 18 to 25-year-olds, and we've been collecting data for the last 7 years. Similarly shows that while our rates among young adults are a little higher than the national norm, the largest category is those that don't use. And so I really do think it's important that when there are those misperceived norms, we look at the opportunities to correct those. So promise I'm not trying to dodge the answer. I literally would need to look up the most recent year of data collection what we at my school. But I do know, but I do know it's the case that most people aren't using.
Okay. And, in Colorado, is it the same in Washington where, it's written in our Constitution that 18 to 20-year-olds, since that's the age group you're looking at, medically can get a med card and, say they have a migraine and go to the dispensary. Do you have that same in Washington?
Again, things changed quite a bit because we had these retail stores that had a very clear tax structure, but then we had these medical groups where it was less clear, there was less oversight. So those got folded in to the retail such that now if people have a card, they can go to the same store that someone is going to use non-medically, but they just have a tax exemption
and
for
starting
that.
At what age for the med card?
I would defer to the legislation. Seemingly, I would defer to our state's Liquor and Cannabis Board for that.
Okay, no, I just didn't know at what age in Washington a teen can go get a med card. In Colorado, it's 18. So, okay.
Again, that's a question best for our Liquor and Cannabis Board.
Yeah.
Again, we don't, because I work with college students, I know the law around college students pretty well, but when it's kids younger than that, I defer to the experts on that age group.
Yeah. But in college, when they get to college, some of them are 18, 19, 20. Do you see 18, 19, 20-year-olds using cannabis in college?
We do. And the main thing is every college in the United States, to stay compliant with federal drug-free schools and campus regulations, has to show that they have an effective, comprehensive alcohol and other drug prevention program to keep substances out of the hands of minors. And so, if people say, I have a card, I want to be able to live on campus, a lot of residence halls are saying, for us to stay compliant with drug-free schools and campus regulations, use and possession remains illegal, so you would have to live elsewhere.
Wow.
College campuses, unless something changes, if something changes federally, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but right now, drug-free schools and campus regulations say that because it's federal, it doesn't matter what states have done. Use and possession are illegal, and campuses have to have prevention programs that are effective, and there have to be measures of that effectiveness to show that they're working to keep it out of the hands of students when it's illegal and minors when it's alcohol.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
When you talked about community and parental disapproval rates to lower use, but I keep hearing that we must get rid of stigma to drug use. How do you think stigma factors into use or not using?
The research in this says it's a fascinating question. The shorter answer is, is there a stigma to saying 99% of parents don't want their kids using a substance? I don't think that's a stigma. I think that's contributing to a perceived norm, particularly if students say, my parents wouldn't care. A lot of times there's a gross misperception. When we looked at descriptive norms, it's like what I mentioned earlier. Most people don't use. But injunctive norms are attitudes. There's research that shows that for kids that are struggling, even messages of hope, that their communities are rooting for them, matter. It matters when kids know there's someone out there rooting for me and that cares what I do. So a message like our community doesn't support substance use, that can contribute to stigma. A message like our community doesn't support substance use by kids, we want our kids to stay drug-free, that's a message that makes sure that if students who are making the choice to use say, well, my community wouldn't care, you saw the data. Kids that genuinely think my community wouldn't care, the rates of use are much, much higher.
Yes, got it. Okay, two more questions.
One more thing. Jeff Linkenbach at the Montana Institute is someone that does incredible work on positive community norms and works with communities on exactly the type of thing you're looking at. He says, if you want health, we must promote health. And that means we avoid scare tactic-y types of things. That means we avoid things like stigma. And so just to give a shout out to the work that Dr. Linkenbach does, that's really important.
I'll have to have him on at a future Johnny's Ambassadors.
He's amazing.
What is your view of laws in terms of benefit to curbing use?
I don't understand the question.
Do you think that we should have laws? What is your view of laws in terms of benefits to curbing use? And I think you addressed that a bit. You did say that you have rules. You can't live on campus.
I misunderstood. I will say this, having policies, you have to enforce them though. And if there are mixed messages, that is going to impact use. I remember walking once right off of campus, and on a street right off of campus in Seattle, there was a group of 4 people sitting on the sidewalk using marijuana in public, and about 10 feet away was a police officer writing a parking ticket. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm really glad that they're enforcing that expired parking meter, but is the presence of police around public use with no enforcement, without even a warning, does that send a message? And I worry that it does. So what we have found is that post-legalization, at least among 18 to 25-year-olds, We have seen, if anything, rates have trended upward. Again, the majority still aren't using, but we have not seen that legalization has somehow curbed use. In fact, we have seen that use has increased, and that's something we're preparing for publication as we speak. But if you do have laws that say you're not allowed to use in public, enforce them, and enforce them consistently. If you have laws that say you can't drive under the influence, enforce them, and enforce them consistently.
Well, I'm watching your time. I want to let you go with this one final comment. It says, excellent presentation, but you have me worried because I never remember my dreams and I don't smoke a thing or drink any kind of alcohol and sodas. So thank you so much, Jason.
Lots of cause not remembering dreams, and that can include a noisy partner. It can include a noisy sleep environment. It can include having to get up and use the restroom. Anything that wakes you up out of REM, or it could just be people say, I never dream, and it's because they're not remembering them. But if we look at them, they're definitely getting REM sleep. So, Laura, before we wrap, can I just say, I'm so sorry for the loss that you've experienced, but if you look at an instance of someone that really has had something like that and made such a huge impact, I feel like in prevention, it's challenging because people don't call us and say, hey, nothing bad happened today. Keep up the good work, right? When there's something bad happens, it goes on our radar. So I always try and give a shout out to people I consider to be prevention heroes. I hope you know you're one of those, and I thank you for the work you've done to make a difference in your own state and also across the country. So thank you for that.
I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And I was going to thank you for being one of Johnny's newest ambassadors and for your time and talent, incredible contributions. I know people will be watching this over and over. Thanks again, Jason. Thanks to all of you, and we'll see you next time here on Johnny's Ambassadors. Take care.